Well, welcome to our week 3. I thought I'd go over the essay questions that you may see on our week 3 assessment. I like for these not to be gotchas, but I like for you to have time to jot down some ideas, brainstorm. That way you can craft a really good essay. And so that's what I'd like to do with these 3 questions. Now, one of the 3 will show up for you. I just don't know which one. So we'll kind of go through all 3 of them so that you feel prepared. You have some ideas flowing for each one of them. So let's take a moment and look at the prompt we have here. I love this one because it's a personal story that we can apply the things we've learned in week 3 for. So this one is going to be a personal experience. So that means you're going to choose what you want to talk about. I would probably choose a decision in your life that had a situation where you used both data and intuition. So I'm going to use one for myself just as our example. And that was to my decision to become a teacher. Okay. And I might include in that my degree, my training to become a teacher. That's what I'm going to base our example off of. You can choose to base yours off of something else, but that's what I'm going to use for my example. Okay, so let's take a look at the process that we use to make the decision. Okay, so the first thing, and I'm going to put this here, the process to make the decision. I'm just going to kind of follow through the prompt. This is the one I'm looking at right now. So a couple of things that I did before I decided to become a teacher, I took a personality test. I wanted to see what I was actually good at. What did my personality kind of lean towards in a job? I also did a skills assessment. This could take on many, many forms. You may have done this before in a particular job, but many times we have a skills assessment that will say, oh, you are more geared towards this kind of job. And those were pretty telling, but they weren't 100% locking me into a teacher. They just really, both of these, the personality test and the skills assessment for me eliminated some jobs, meaning I probably should not be doing brain surgery. That's just not my personality, to be working in an environment that is high stress all the time, just to give you an example. Then another thing I did was to research the job. Research what kind of money it made, research what kind of training was required, researched where I could get a job. All of those kinds of things I did some research on. And then I eliminated obvious jobs that were not a good fit. Meaning, instead of having 30 options for the job I wanted to go for, by eliminating the ones that were obviously not a good fit, I could get it down to about 5. Right? Wow, 5 is way easier to swallow than 30. So obviously eliminating some that were not a good fit. And then I made a decision. Now, I'm just putting bullet point notes here, okay? Obviously, we want to use this eventually to craft an essay, but I'm not crafting at this point. I'm just brainstorming, okay? All right, so next, let's look at what data we would use. What data would I use to make my decision? Whoops, let's keep the prompt there. I used it income data. So I looked at what teachers made, not just at the beginning, although that was important to me. I looked at throughout their career. What did teachers make? I also looked at um, job location. Where could I get a job? And I know you're thinking, well, a teacher can get a job anywhere. Well, that's true, but particularly the type of job that I want, the subject area I wanted to go into dictated how easy it was going to be to get a job. For instance, as a math teacher, you're right, I can get a job anywhere. But as a PE teacher, it would have been a little bit more difficult to get a job. And so those were very, very important. Oh, and the other thing was training required. So I looked at the data as far as like, where could I go to school? What classes, how many classes would I need to take? This one actually looked very different. I'll give you an example because my husband is also a teacher, but our training tracks, like the training I got and the training he got, looked very, very different. Yes, we both have degrees, but I did student teaching, which was traditional training for a teacher, whereas he got his degree and then did an alternative certification program. So the training looked a little bit different. So there was some data there we could look at. Okay, and then let's look at how much of my decision was based on intuition. Now, intuition, big word that just simply means on my gut feeling. If I can spell it. I would say that a lot of my decision was based on intuition. Because this was going to be something that I'm going to do for my career. It's something I was going to do long term. I mean, 20 something years later, I'm still teaching. So that was important. I wanted it to be something that I loved. I wanted it to be something I was good at and geared towards. So I would say more than half of my decision was made by intuition. I'll give you a situation, a scenario, kind of a little backstory. I grew up in a very large family. So I can look back at even my childhood, my teenage years, where I was teaching. I was not in a formal setting, but with siblings. I was showing them how to do something. I was helping them with their homework. I played school all the time as a little kid. That was just what I did. I loved doing it. So it was, for me, looking at the decision of becoming a teacher was a very natural fit and progression with what my upbringing, my childhood had looked like. That is why a lot of my decision was based on intuition. The data factored into it in that, am I going to be able to get a job? Am I going to be able to make a decent income for my family? And then also, how much training is actually required to do that? And then let's look at the next one, which is, what was the result? So for this one, I obviously chose to become a teacher, right? And is there anything I would do differently? And I wouldn't. I would make my decision again and again and again. It is what I was created to do, right? It is what I am wired to do. So no, I made a good decision with a mix of data and intuition. Now, that is my brainstorming session for this essay prompt. I feel like it is comprehensive. I feel like I could get 100 words out of this very easily just by filling in a little bit of the blanks here with sentence structure and those kinds of things. So feel free to use this as a launching pad. Obviously, you probably are not facing the decision of becoming a teacher or not, but that's okay. You are going to make other decisions, but I want you to see how I took the prompt and I broke it down step by step, did my brainstorming first, and then then I can put my sentences together. And like I said, I could get 100 words out of this very easily. Okay, just by filling in a few verbs and these and all of that good stuff. So maybe this is your essay prompt. I don't know. But let's take a look at the next one. Take a moment to look at the prompt. Okay, so this one is you are being tasked as the manager of a clothing store in a large mall. We want to explain how you gather information about customer purchasing habits, how you would use the information to set prices in the store. Okay. For this one, we're going to brainstorm just like we did the other one. I'm going to do a little bit of intro that I feel like can kind of tie it in to get it started. And I might just call it out. As a manager of a clothing store, I am responsible for price setting that maybe maximizes the profit for the store, obviously, right? And let's put in there, I also want to give my customers value for a valuable product. Let's say that, a valuable product for a good price. Okay, that's a good intro. And sometimes when the intro comes to you, you need to just jot it down. As someone who is not necessarily a self-proclaimed not gifted writer, it's definitely one I want to make sure if it comes to me, man, I'm going to write it down. So let's take a look then at brainstorming. Now, the first part of the write an essay, explain how you would gather information about customer pricing habits. Okay, so how are we going to gather that information? I definitely think we got to look at sales data. We got to look at what our customers actually purchasing in the store that month. And because clothing is so seasonal, I might want to look at last season's data. What did they purchase this time of year last year? I think this is very important that I'm focusing on gathering the information and it's numerical, right? I'm not going on a gut feeling thinking everybody's going to buy purple shirts this week. And so I'm going to stock a whole bunch of purple shirts just because I have a feeling. I want to know that last week they bought purple shirts. I want to know that last year, this time, they also bought purple shirts before I stock the purple shirts to make sure that, remember, I'm trying to get the company the most profit they can, but I also want my customers to have a valuable product for a good price. And then once I gather the data, then how am I going to use it? So how am I going to use it to set the price in my store? Okay. I think this is the one that's going to take a little bit more thinking here. How do I use the data? So I'm going to do little bullets here. First thing first is based on that, based on the data, just like we're talking about with the purple shirts, I'm going to be able to stock the appropriate inventory. Okay. If I know that this time last year, purple shirts were selling at a premium, I'm going to stock the appropriate inventory. I'm also going to know that I want to set the price so that the customer feels like they're getting a good deal, but the company is also making a good profit. I think that's key. You know, I want to, if last year the purple shirts sold at this price, let's say $15, right? Then I want to price it at $15 again, because obviously that's where my customer thought they were getting a good deal on the product, but my company was also making a good profit. I think that's valuable information to be able to look at that track record of what did it do last week in the current season, and then what did it do last year in this season. Also, another way to use this data is to know when to mark down the price to avoid leftover inventory. You're coming to the end of the summer. All the fall clothes are coming out. It's time to move away the summer inventory. I need to get it marked down effectively and efficiently at the right price so that I don't have a whole lot of summer inventory I have to store during the fall and the winter. So knowing not just what the price should be, but knowing when to mark down the price, I think is important in this scenario as well. Okay, how we doing? We got two pretty good brainstorming sessions going on with these two prompts so far. I think there's a lot of potential in both of these essays, and I hope feel free to use some of the brainstorming here. Add your own twist to it. My ideas are not 100% the only ideas on the planet, but they will get the ball rolling for you. And that if you've ever been in a situation where you just couldn't come up with something to write, well, now you have a little bit of brainstorming. So I hope that helps you. We're going to look at the third prompt here in just a second. Just a reminder on both of the prompts we've already done. If that happens to be your prompt, take the time and craft your essay. Get your brainstorm, your ideas together, put it all down on paper or type it in a Word document. First, then step back and reread it. This is going to help you to eliminate any grammatical errors. You're going to make sure that your sentences flow together. And there's lots of good value in that. You might even want someone else to read it for you before you submit. I think there's merit in doing that as well. Okay, time for that third and final essay prompt. Let's take a look at it. I'll give you a minute to read through that one. All right. So again, we're in a clothing store. This time we're not the manager, we're the assistant manager. And we are interviewing and being asked to present ideas on how the store can increase its sales. So write an essay about what you would say to your boss. Okay. Be sure to mention several price setting techniques and how they might help the store. Okay. I think it's a great opportunity here. My first thought is let's get to the data. Let's look and see, just like we did in the previous one, we got to look and see what the sales were last week, got to look and see what the sales were last season, because we want to maximize that to help with increasing our sales. So do I have an idea about an intro? Maybe I will, let's do this. As I interview with my boss about the assistant manager position, I can spell sometimes, folks, and sometimes not so much. There we go. I want to present my ideas about how to increase sales for the store. Okay, so basically I took those first two sentences and I rewrote it for my intro. Okay, I didn't really answer any of it yet, but I did kind of intro my essay. Okay, so what do we want to talk about with the boss? Points to make. And let's just do some bullets here. We want to make sure we want to review the data, right? Just like we talked about in the last essay. Want to review the data from the current season and last year's data from the same season. Because we want to do some comparison between what's happening right now and what happened the same time of year last year. So I want to talk to my boss about that. I want to make sure that we're reviewing the data so we know how to stock the inventory and how to price the items in their current season. So let's make sure we say that. This will help us stock the appropriate inventory as well as price the items to maximize profit. Ooh, that's good right there, right? So I definitely want to make the point about reviewing the data, and I want to tell him how this data is going to help us increase our sales. And then I want to make a plan. I want to make a plan for the current season and the upcoming season. And I'm using season because it's a clothing store. If I were in a different business, I might not use season here. I might use 3 to 6 months. So I might say something, make a plan for the current month and the upcoming 3 to 6 months or the upcoming quarter. So we'll make a plan for the current season and the upcoming season for setting prices on inventory. And I think you've got a good base here. I think you definitely can see where we can make some improvements on the sales. Oh, and the other thing I forgot, I want to do this too. In addition to make a plan for setting prices, I want to make a plan to periodically review the sales data to make changes if necessary. So that's important too. So not only are we going to make a plan, we're going to make a plan to evaluate whether our plan is working or not. I think that last step is something we leave off a lot of times because we don't always think about, oh, how are we going to check and see if this is working? I don't want to wait to the end of 3 months to see if it's working. We might be in the hole multiple grand, multiple thousands of dollars. So I want to, if there's a problem, I want to catch it early so that I can actually minimize the loss. Or more importantly, I can tweak it and change the plan so that I can get back on track with the sales. So making that plan to review to see how the plan is working, I think is important. And then we will be prepared to make changes. So we've got a plan B, we got a plan A, but we got a plan B and C and D as well, right? So if this doesn't work, we're moving on to something else. And I think that's going to help us when we're trying to decide if our plan is working or not. So, okay, friends, we've got 3 good prompts here for the assessment this week. We've brainstormed each and every one of them, depending upon which one you get assigned. Feel free to come back to this video, rewind it, watch it, go through the brainstorming session again so that you're prepared to write a really, really good essay for any of these prompts. I believe you can get 100 words out of any of these just by crafting your sentence structure carefully. Remember, we talked about either handwriting it on paper and then rereading it before you type it, Or type it in a Word document, step back from it, then look at it again to see if you need to make any changes, make sure it flows together nicely so that you can really have the benefit of taking your time to do that.